My name is Ron Barris, and I'm joined by Scott Pearson for this discussion about simplifying external user management in Microsoft 365. I'm with TFW Labs, and we are headquartered in Dallas, Texas, with operations also globally in India. We are a Microsoft Gold service provider, and we've been in business for 15 plus years. You may recognize us from our software technology called Titan Workspace, which provides employee productivity modules for Microsoft Teams and SharePoint for things like document management, guest user collaboration, intranet, project and task, and we ultimately help your hybrid workforce with providing a strong digital mobile solution for them. So today, we wanted to focus on the real challenges faced by Office 365 and Microsoft Team users around specifically managing external users like 1099 employees, consultants, partners, interns, and more, however you label it. But how this work is typically done today is by using Excel and email, which is segmented, not manageable, updatable, or at the very least, it's also not secure because a lot of times you're sending this information out into the wild to non-AD users outside of your secure environment. So the ultimate question is, why is collaboration needed with guest users? Perhaps you can think of a time when you'd love to communicate ultimately with people outside of your organization to share sensitive data or track tasks or approvals, but you want to do this all in your own secure environment. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about three major areas of collaboration for you to incorporate these guest users. The first of which is managing the guest user experience with no internal hassle to your IT person. We're also going to talk about the process for guest users to collaborate with you. What would it look like for them to collaborate with you? And then finally, most importantly, we're going to talk about how we can handle this from a secure perspective and a compliant perspective to give you and your organization the comfort you need to do this successfully. So Scott, that's where you come in. You're going to be sharing more details here.
Oh boy, yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks a lot. I know that the first topic you mentioned is really kind of the meat of the issue. It's a challenge in most Microsoft environments to take care of this. And do you have kind of more details about how that works?
Oh, it's funny. So absolutely right. So we wanted to talk about really onboarding and the internal hassle of what it really looks like to do this normally within the system. And I have a great example for this. We have a client, and his name is Tom, and he kind of explained to me the process that it took to request a guest user into his environment. So he wanted to get consultants and partners in there, and he called it the 6-step process of horror, basically. The first step was he had to initiate a request to his Microsoft tenant administrator, and that tenant administrator happened to be his chief information officer. And so he would make the request to him. And then ultimately the chief information officer would have to go out and basically create information on this guest user and Azure directory as a step 2, right? But then step 3, as if the chief information officer wasn't busy enough, he had to send a manual invite to these multiple different guest users that Tom wanted to send to. But that really wasn't the problem. I mean, there was obviously some manual effort there. But ultimately, they tried to avoid what they called the black hole, step number 4, because many times these invites would get into a junk folder or they just wouldn't be accepted. And then they had to start the whole process again or figure out where they were at. And so the chief information officer would have to resend this invite and figure out if they got it. So it was a real chaotic process. But getting past the black hole, they got to step 5, which was, how exciting is that? Like the acceptance, I accept being a guest user in your environment. That wasn't it either. So once the guest user actually accepted being inside the tenant of this organization, the chief information officer and often the SharePoint administrator of Tom's organization, they had to create the parameters of how this person can collaborate in their environment. So they had to make sure this person was only privy to information, folders, that they only needed to do their collaboration with Tom and his team. And that was a tedious process unto itself too. So Scott, I think that's a great segue for you. Wouldn't it be easier if there was a better method than this whole chaos here? It's like kind of like herding cats.
Yeah, way to set it up for me, Ron. Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that it's interesting as you listen to that whole process. Security is part, is driving all of this, obviously. In the world we live in today, every step of every part of this is, we have to be very security conscious, and that's probably the reason there's only one tenant administrator allowed, right? You don't bunch of people out there able to add just anybody to your environment. Let me go ahead and share a screen, and I'll kind of walk through how we have been able to figure out how to bring somebody on board, or somebody that's not part of your corporate environment and part of your ecosystem, bring them on board to collaborate. So I'll share my screen now, and select the correct share button.
Participation, Scott. Oh, excellent. Here we go.
All right. There we go. Can you see that, Ron?
Yes, looks good.
Great. This is part of our Titan Workspace environment, but specifically we're talking about guest users today. But you can see we're running inside of Microsoft Teams. There are a variety of modules available as part of this environment. I'll talk about a few of them in a little bit, but primarily the first step you would take as someone using the system and trying to invite somebody to become a collaborator in your environment is to create a request internally. Now, Ron described the request that goes to the CIO or the senior management person that's a tenant admin in the environment in the other description that he provided. This allows that tenant admin to delegate that management functionality to the administration team by utilizing this tool. To add somebody, it's pretty simple. You add. You can certainly work with existing guest users that have been added to the system and are in a variety of different statuses. For example, you can look for specific types of users like consultants or interns or whoever you've defined as a guest user. There are organizations such as consulting organizations that can be added, where multiple users under those consulting organizations can be added. You can also filter by a variety of things like the supervisor name, external supervisor status, etc. Now, to add somebody, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is add the basic demographic information required here, which is name, email, address, of course. You have to identify either them as an individual or part of an organization. And really importantly, you identify what kind of collaborator they are by tagging them with a collaborator, a template, as well as a validity date. That's very important because most Microsoft environments have guest users participating or non-AD users participating, but they don't have end dates in the environment, so that it really forces you into a model of having to audit annually, all those users that have been part of your collaboration environment, but no longer are participating or literally shouldn't be there any longer. You submit that request. It goes to the administrative team. I've opened up one of those administrative wrong button here. Go back to our shared screen, and this is the same screen I was just on within Teams. We also within this system give everyone a really flexible way to administer this whole system. It's designed to run, to leverage SharePoint and other Microsoft tools. This layer allows just the general business user to administer it. You don't have to be a SharePoint administrator to manage this system. So what we've done is provide this panel for the administrators that are helping the tenant administrator manage this system, just work through this process. Now, guest users have been invited. When they're invited, they're in various stages of acceptance. We can also invite a guest user from here if the company process dictates that an administrator also do the invitations. That can take place here. But when someone's been invited, they're in various stages of they have various statuses. It's initiated, invited, accepted or not accepted, or active. Now, when this screen comes up for the administrator, it defaults to all of the activities that there's some kind of action due. You can see the color coding and the various actions. You can also, if you're an administrator managing thousands that are in various processes, sort it however you want. You can only look for example, those that are accepted but not yet active. This is demo data, so there's only one listed in this one right now, but at least it illustrates kind of that ability to sort through that and search. They have another nice function here with just the search box. You can search for any specific information, and it searches throughout the platform. This is TFW. I typed in there. I can type Scott, right? I don't have any records there. Or Tanya. So you have a variety of different search criteria consultants, right? That you can search for. Now, you can see the action buttons on the right. There are question marks. You can delete a transaction if you want. There are different statuses, but if you want to permit somebody into the environment, the administrator would open up that screen, validate information that's already input, create verify what collaboration type they are, as well as what view they will receive, and the validate and submit. Once that's submitted by the administrator, an invitation with credentials goes out to the guest user, and they're allowed into the environment. And I'll show you how that works in a minute, because it relates really to your second point, Ron. And I'll stop sharing now so you can.
That's a great point. So Scott, you basically shared with us how we can herd cats and onboard them if they're not AD users, right? And do it securely, and that was very powerful. But what happens for the process for them to collaborate? What does it look like? So do we just let these users access all the folders and attachments inside the company? No, that seems like that would create a problem versus solve a problem. But what we want for these different collaborators, we want different levels of access. We want different parameters for them. So I had a large pharmaceutical company ask for a solution to a problem a few days back, and ultimately it was they wanted visiting scientists, they wanted physicians, they wanted consultants, they wanted their 1099 employees all part of the fold here, and that's all different interactions. Which reminds me too, we also had our one customer who initially has a commercial real estate company that has multiple investor groups. They need to curate the right information for the right recipients. It was so important not to share the same information with all these people. How do you do that? So Scott, I think you have an answer, I'm sure, right? You have
of course.
in your back pocket to share with us.
Again, thank you for that segue. Yeah, and I certainly the real estate scenario was really interesting because again, groups of investors and groups of collaborators, you don't necessarily want them interacting with each other or sharing data. But we need to create an environment that we can collaborate in, and I'll show you that right now.
Okay, excellent.
I'll share again here. Always have to hunt for my share button. All right. So once somebody actually receives, can you see my screen, Ron?
I'm adjusting my screen now, and you look perfect. Yes, you do.
Right. So what I've done here is log into what we call a portal. It's actually a template, and I'm going to take just a minute to describe it. It looks pretty simple and straightforward just looking at it, but basically we can kind of design the template based upon the customer need. We can design that in a way that we can deliver elements that you're collaborating on with the collaborator to this portal. In this case, we have access, this James Smith, who logged in with a Hotmail account. You don't need Microsoft credentials to do this.
That's great.
We onboarded them as a guest user and gave them this template, which gives them access to projects they're collaborating on, tasks they're collaborating with our stakeholders with, as well as any documents that they're collaborating on. So we have a document management system. I'll jump back over there to just briefly, no, that's the wrong one. Briefly take a look at what I'm really delivering to our guest user. Within our document management system, we can kind of logically coordinate information in different categories. And at the bottom, on the left-hand side, you see guest portal documents. Well, I'm able with this system to specifically collaborate with guest users that are, in this case, part of Johnson Dairy Systems. Excuse me for the unimaginative name I made up one day in the demo. Johnson Dairy Systems, and actually interact with them on those documents. Now, they will see those documents come to them in this form. They'll have access to my documents. They can certainly add and save documents that that are part of their environment. Having this, there we go. My documents, any documents that have been shared with them also get listed here with a variety of statuses. You can see through our document management system, we can request acknowledgments. We can provide different restricted views, read-only, full access. It depends on what level of collaboration you want to provide. Of course, we went into a lot of that sharing restrictions and collaboration related to documents in the last session last month, and I invite you to watch that also if you have a few minutes. But what's important is we give a specific portal, giving them access to documents that they are specifically collaborating with us on. Additionally, we give them access to any tasks or requests that have been provided to them, as well as, in this case, projects that they're collaborating with us on. I just clicked into one of the projects. It pulls up the project details. I must have clicked on the wrong one here, but that gives you an idea of the concept for the template itself.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Each it's kind of a bespoke approach. Every customer has a little bit different need and a little bit different type of collaboration group that they deal with. And it's important to note also that we have created a e-sign integration with Adobe e-sign, as well as a Titan e-sign functionality in our document approval process within our system that extends out to these guest portals, so that if you're regularly requiring e-signature for approvals of processes or documents or any type of documentation, that can be extended out to anybody you're collaborating with in the portal. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, you did, and that's a great segue here. So the third problem, we really want secure collaboration and business best practice. So Scott, you've shared successfully how we onboard them securely. Now, how do we work with them securely while improving efficiency? And that was one example, obviously, you mentioned with the Adobe e-signature, but obviously this approach helps to mitigate the issue of attached documents and releasing them to the wild, because obviously as a security administrator, you that's very important from a compliance perspective to make sure non-employees are interacting in an appropriate fashion with your organization. Can you go into more detail about the security aspect of what we do?
So that's a good point. And, I don't really have to show the screen a lot on this one because it's really a discussion around this conceptually. You've already seen how the document management system works. You've seen how the guest portal works. We actually create a, for lack of a better term, a collaboration standard that, users will actually adopt. We've all been inundated with quarterly requests for password changes and constant new requirements to get our work done, that are there with the strong hand of security on top of that. So that I believe this creates an environment that allows you to secure documents and collaboration material, both from the source and from the edge of the network, if you will, with our guest users. It creates an environment where they can assign us tasks as a company, right? If they're one of our collaborators, and we can assign them tasks so we can all speak the same language. There's no more requirement for, text, even social media, somebody sending me, it's a little extreme to direct message me on Instagram to ask me for something for business, but I'm sure it's been done somewhere.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. This hybrid working environment,
right,
like WhatsApp and all these non-compliant sources, it's all about giving control back to the company, creating a more compliant structure that way. It's not only for security reasons, but just for protocol. Because what happens if there's not, what if someone wasn't employed and they're interacting and they're on a text thread or whatever it may be? Why are they still interacting with the organization and that sort of thing? But hey, Scott, one of the things I noticed as we're going through here, we do have a series of chat questions.
Okay.
So we're gonna pop quiz you. Are you okay with that?
You bet.
Okay, I'm looking at question here. So how does Titan address the security needs in keeping the external users from being able to see everything in a SharePoint folder?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, basically, SharePoint's an excellent platform for managing that. But on top of that, we've built Titan Workspace to make it manageable by the business user. So all a business user has to do is through our tool, apply the right permissions, as well as, depending upon that portal for collaborators, to be restricted regarding what sections of the environment they're able to collaborate on. So I think we have it handled both ways, really.
It's kind of set up for them to only view what they're supposed to be. Okay.
Correct.
Good question. Good question. I'm looking at someone else had a question. Okay. Is it possible for an external user to only be able to view a document and not edit it both online and offline?
Yeah. Part of our, and we went into this a bit last month with our document management content. We're able to apply those permissions I talked about all the way out to the documents that exist and reside inside Teams groups, as well as synced back into OneDrive. So if you want offline content that's originated in this environment, it's going to carry with it the permissions that you establish for those that content. So if you want it to be read-only, it's going to be read-only when somebody syncs it to their OneDrive and needs access to it on an airplane.
Exactly. So by read-only, literally you can't even download the document. So you're creating just a visual. Okay.
Yeah.
We have scrolling through here. We have another question too. Okay, is the external user given access to the same screens in Titan as the internal user? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think the answer is, what do you want to do? Obviously, with this portal, you can give them very broad access if you choose to design the template that way. Most people don't, and that's not necessarily best practice. So no, that the user typically does not have access to the same screens. Now, they have access to the content that you're jointly collaborating with them on, and that's the whole objective of the system.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to point out. So if you had a question today or a concern or a request that you didn't put in the chat, I know it's kind of hard to figure out how to do the chat here. feel free to reach out to us. We certainly can answer your questions offline, or either follow up with a demonstration or something in more detail for you to kind of get those questions answered. And I also think it's important to point out that if you like Scott today and you liked him last month, I like you, Scott. I thought you were great. So every third week of the month, we have a new topic. And right now we're deciding which topic to have for next month. But make sure to keep an eye out for that, because we have a lot of great things to discuss, particularly around how to manage just the employee productivity products and solutions within Teams and SharePoint. And today was guest user. You had an excellent session with Ashish just last month in regards to document management. I thought that was powerful and kind of went into detail on how people can be successful managing that process too.
Great.
Yeah.
So,
we are, as I mentioned before, we are a Microsoft Gold Service provider. So we do more than just software. We do services, and we would value the opportunity to answer your questions or to help you. To learn more about us as a company, you can go to titanworkspace.com. So that's Titan, like the muscle Titan, right? Workspace.com. And we'd be glad to help you. And we really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Goodbye now.